We are less than 2 weeks away from Apple's long-awaited mid-season event for their annual Worldwide Developers Conference, and based on rumors, it is going to be quite an exciting show, with not only previews for iOS 17 and watchOS 10 and macOS 14, but this year isn't going to be all about software. Apple is also gearing up to launch what could be one of their most popular laptop models ever, a new version of the MacBook Air, with the biggest screen ever in a MacBook Air and the longest battery life ever in a MacBook, all at a lower price than you would expect for a big MacBook. But even if you're ready to buy this new 15-inch MacBook Air, you're gonna need some accessories to go along with it, and this one by Ugreen fixes the biggest problem with the M1 and M2 MacBooks, and that is that natively, you can only connect one display at a time. But thanks to Ugreen's 9-in-1 docking station, you can connect up to 2 4K external displays at once. Yeah, these are 2 big 4K displays running at 60 Hz, and with the MacBook Air, you get 3 full displays for unparalleled multitasking, so you can have multiple windows open on different screens while editing a video in Final Cut Pro and also watching a YouTube video tutorial. Because it runs all the displays at 60 Hz rather than some other adapters which cap out at 30 Hz for multiple monitors, the desktop is smooth whether you're scrolling through content, the Final Cut timeline, or dragging windowed applications between multiple monitors. One thing I really appreciate about this Ugreen docking station is that it doesn't have a heavy power supply to drive it. This thing is literally only being driven by the power through the USB-C port on the MacBook Air, and on top of that, it expands the MacBook Air to have 2 HDMI ports, 2 display ports, 10 gigabit Ethernet, a 100-watt power delivery, and 2 USB-A and 1 USB-C port, all running at full 10 gigabit speeds through a single cable connection, making this not only a streamlined docking station, but a very powerful one at that. To learn more, check out the link in the description below, and thank you to Ugreen for sponsoring this video. Alright, so why am I so confident we are going to see a 15-inch MacBook Air at WWDC 2023? Well, we have been hearing about a bigger size version of the MacBook Air for about the past year now, and we are now seeing a huge ramp up in leaks and reports that all make the release of this 15-inch laptop all but certain in the next 2 weeks. The most certain of these last-minute reports is from a MacBook supplier. This is Quanta Computer, and they are gearing up supposedly to manufacture a huge number of these MacBooks. And a recent report from last month from Mark Gurman, he said that new MacBooks were going to be announced at WWDC, and he is frequently right when it comes to rumors, especially for last-minute rumors like these. However, this MacBook Air might be in for a bit of a weird announcement if rumors are to be believed. You see, last year is actually when the first redesign of the 13-inch M2 MacBook Air came out, and yeah, it debuted with that new, faster M2 chip. But if rumors are to be believed for this new 15-inch version, it doesn't seem like it's going to get the next generation M3 chip, or that the M3 chip is even ready to go into any MacBook, which does mean that if Apple does launch this new 15-inch MacBook Air, it is looking very, very likely that it will launch with just an M2 chip. However, even though you might feel like you're missing out on the M3, I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, because of the increase in size of the 15-inch body over the 13-inch, it's likely that there may be some small benefits. First of all, a bigger body naturally means that heat dissipation would be better in the machine, considering components could be more spaced out. And it could also mean Apple could theoretically fit in a larger heatsink into the laptop. Now, I don't think they're going to include anything like an active fan, just like the 13-inch model doesn't include one, but the larger body could naturally mean that the M2 chip could run just a bit cooler than the 13-inch model, meaning theoretically we could see some slight performance gains on this M2 chip, even though it's the same M2 chip with longer multi-threaded workflows. Although I kind of doubt that even that would be enough to kind of show a significant difference over the 13-inch, and it kind of doesn't have to have a huge power difference. Listen, the M2 is already blazing fast for what most people need it for, and especially for owners who are planning on buying the Air model rather than a Pro model. Considering you can already use the Air for higher-end workflows like video editing, music production, and development, most people won't need an M3 chip in these machines to be convinced to buy one. What is going to convince people to buy this laptop, and this is really no surprise to anyone, is the bigger 15.5-inch display, which based on rumors I think is going to be the identical spec to what we have on the 13-inch model, so a P3 wide color gamut LCD display with 500 nits of brightness running at a 60 Hz refresh rate. However, that is going to give you much more screen real estate than the 13-inch model and even more screen real estate than the lower end 14-inch MacBook Pro, and it's going to mark the biggest display ever in an Apple consumer level laptop. If you're wondering why that's a big deal, it's because that up until the release of this laptop, if you wanted to go for a big screen MacBook Pro, you would have to go all the way up to the Pro model. And if we're looking at the current pricing of a 16-inch MacBook Pro, that's a device that starts at $2,500. And it's a device that comes with power and specs that frankly, most people think they need, but they don't actually need. So it's kind of like they're spending too much money on this device to get benefits that they aren't even going to use. So, because it's just kind of like a bigger 13-inch M2 Air, the price increase isn't going to be that much. I assume that a 15-inch M2 MacBook Air, would probably be about $200 or a $300 price difference. If I had to make a guess, I think the laptop would start at $1,500. That's a $200 bump for the increase in screen size, just like if you were to compare the equivalent spec versions of the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro, and then another $100 because I think that the 15-inch version of this laptop is going to cut down on the number of SKUs available, and by default, the 15-inch model will probably ship with the 10-core variant of the M2 chip, which is a $100 upgrade on the 13-inch M2 MacBook Air. So $1,500 or $1,000 less than a 16-inch MacBook Pro for an M2 15.5-inch MacBook Air with a configuration of 8 GB of memory and 256 GB of starting storage. And then, of course, obviously, you can spec the machine out just like you could with the existing M2 machine, so you could bump that up all the way to 24 GB of unified memory, maximum of 2 TB of storage, and I guess that would give us like a theoretical max price of $2,699, which for a max spec is going to be like $200 more than a 16-inch MacBook Pro. So I think that's the price to be in, but that's not the price that's going to sell, right? It's that $1,500 starting price that is going to be a big deal, and it's going to make it one of the most popular Macs on the market. And the reason I'm saying that is because the most popular size in the PC market is around a 15-inch form factor. So this is something that, strangely, Apple has never had in their consumer level laptops, and up until this point has reserved solely for the more expensive Pro models, which most people are not going to buy. On top of that, this 15-inch MacBook Air would also be a better consumer level laptop because Apple can focus on making it thinner than the bulky 16-inch model and lighter. The current 16-inch laptop weighs up to 4.8 pounds, and I would suspect that the 15-inch Air would weigh in the ballpark around 3, maybe like 3.2, 3.3 pounds, and it would probably be just as thin as the current M2 model. And what would drive that weight increase wouldn't necessarily be from things like increased thickness, but from the battery inside of the 15-inch Air, which Apple can increase pretty significantly thanks to the bigger body size. They gotta fill that laptop with something, right? And the M2 chip is already pretty small, so the only thing that's probably gonna go into that is more battery. And this probably also means that this is going to be a hallmark feature of the 15-inch MacBook Air. Battery life. Yeah, I think that this model is going to have the best battery life out of any MacBook on the market, and because of the super efficient M2 chip and the sheer battery capacity that Apple could fit into a bigger 15-inch laptop, I am theorizing we will see maybe 24 hours of max all-day battery life based on Apple's battery rating, and yeah, if they can hit that 24-hour mark, expect that to be used so much in the marketing for this laptop. Like, I can already see the Apple slides going, you get true 24 hours, full, just true, full, all-day battery life on this laptop, and that is gonna be something that they are gonna market with this 15-inch MacBook Air, and it's going to be a really cool thing to have, right? Like, that much battery life in a laptop. Just to think where we were like a few years ago, it's kind of insane. So I'm kind of looking forward to that if Apple can actually get us that true 24-hour all-day battery life. Now, listen, I'm gonna be honest. It doesn't seem like there's any big surprises here with the 15-inch MacBook Air, right? Like, I think we pretty much know what is going to be in store for this laptop, considering it really is just a bigger version of the 13-inch laptop with more battery capacity, which is why it's kind of easy to predict like the strategy and the pricing without any real inside knowledge. However, for one shakeup, maybe a surprise thing we can see on this laptop maybe, just maybe, and maybe this is wishful thinking, is an SD card slot. And yes, Apple brought this back on the new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. And if you go back and look at the previous MacBook Air models when they had two different sizes with the 11 and 13-inch model, the bigger 13-inch MacBook Air came with an SD card slot while the smaller model did not. So I can see Apple adding this to the 15-inch MacBook Air, considering they'll definitely have the space for it, and as a bigger 15-inch laptop, an SD card slot would be kind of appreciated as a feature because people are going to use this for multimedia and they're going to be viewing and editing videos and photos on that bigger 15-inch display. All right, but that is basically what I think we can expect to see from a new 15-inch M2 MacBook Air. And we don't have to wait too long, right? Apple's WWDC event is taking place on June 5th with a live stream at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let me know in the comments below. Are you excited for a new 15-inch MacBook Air? And do you think we will see any surprise additions to this new MacBook? Also, if you like the video, give me a like, subscribe to see more to see if I was right about my predictions, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care, everybody.